When these two are introduced, they don't appear to be anything special. One is a sullen, angry teenage antagonist who constantly chases down the Avatar. The other is a silly old man who looks like he's there just to provide comic relief. One basically looks like the villain you'd expect on a show like this, albeit a little more desperate than usual. The other looks like he may not be evil per se, but he doesn't really take a strong stand against evil either. Neither of these characters look like they'll be that interesting. Neither of them look like they'll be anywhere near as interesting as Aang and Katara and Sokka. They don't look like they have any hidden depths. Sure, they make a good comic duo, but they look to have about the same level of depth as most kids' TV show villains. Well, looks can be deceiving. This is Avatar Explained, Iroh and Zuko edition. By the end of the first season, we learned that our impressions of these characters are completely and utterly false. Zuko is not your typical sullen, angry teenage antagonist. He's someone whose entire sense of identity has been taken away from him. His entire childhood, he defined himself by his title. After his mother left, that was all he had. Then when he was 13 years old, his father burned his face and stripped him of that title and sent him into exile to look for the Avatar. Finding the Avatar is the only way that Zuko can regain his father's approval, which to him is the same thing as his honor. Uncle Iroh is even more interesting. He's not just comic relief, though he does have some hilarious lines, and he's not just a mentor character, though he does have some very wise and sage advice. No, he is a complicated person in his own right. He is the firstborn son of Fire Lord Azulon. By the time Zuko is a child, Iroh has become the top general of the Fire Nation, and in the name of his country, he is laying siege to Ba Sing Se, the capital city of the Earth Kingdom. He spends almost 2 years there. At this point, he's not exactly a great person. He's not a sneering psychopath like Ozai, but he boasts about the possibility of one day burning Ba Sing Se. When he gives his niece and nephew presents, he gives Zuko a pearl-handled dagger conceded by a general who surrendered, and he gives Azula a doll. But Iroh changes when his son dies. He stops laying siege to Ba Sing Se. Not soon after, Azulon dies, and through a complicated bit of trickery and shenanigans, Ozai becomes Fire Lord instead of Iroh. Having had his birthright revoked and his line ended, Iroh goes on a soul-searching quest that leads him into the spirit world and turns him into the wise old man he is by the beginning of Avatar: The Last Airbender. The goofy old man act he puts on is an attempt to both help himself deal with the tragedy in his life and help his nephew deal with all the pressure he's under. In reality, Iroh is one of the most empathetic and emotionally intelligent characters in the show. He is the best mentor Zuko could have possibly had. Without a mentor as understanding as Iroh, Zuko would have more than likely failed in his quest to redeem himself. At the same time, Iroh cannot simply gift Zuko with redemption. Zuko has to earn it. He has to make the choice to become a better person. As Iroh puts it when he and Zuko reunite, Zuko has restored his own honor. Theirs is one of the most acclaimed mentor-student relationships in pop culture, and every ounce of that acclaim is richly deserved. There is nothing easy about their relationship, or about Zuko's redemption, and that is what makes it so satisfying and cathartic when Zuko is finally able to take all of Iroh's lessons to heart and put them into practice. It feels earned. It is the culmination of a long and complicated journey. However, what one must understand about this relationship is that it is strong from the first few episodes of the show. Zuko may outwardly act antagonistic toward Iroh, but he loves Iroh deeply, and Iroh knows this. During the 7th episode of the show, The Spirit World, Zuko embarks on a mission to rescue Iroh, who has been captured by Earth Kingdom soldiers. It's clear even from the way he moves and the way he speaks
how seriously he takes this mission, but the most affecting moment of the episode comes when he has the choice to either pursue the Avatar or rescue his uncle. He chooses Iroh, even though capturing the Avatar is central to his very view of himself. Capturing the Avatar is his stated goal at this point, but he knows the only person who has really been there for him is Iroh. Later in the season, when Zuko prepares to sneak into the Northern Water Tribe and capture Aang before Zhao can, Iroh makes a confession. He says that ever since he lost his son, he has seen Zuko as a son. Zuko, moved, tries to interrupt Iroh by saying Iroh doesn't have to say it because they already both know it, but Iroh says it anyway. Season 1 Zuko, even considering how haunted he is by his tragic backstory, can be hard to like, but his love for his uncle is his most redeeming quality. It's the one thing that always reminds the viewer that he's not just a complicated antagonist, but a fascinating character capable of real, human emotion.
That doesn't mean he always treats his uncle like he should. In episode 205, Avatar Day, an otherwise unremarkable and rather bland episode, Zuko makes the decision to leave Iroh behind. He decides to travel on his own. This comes after several episodes of Uncle Iroh questioning Zuko's behavior, especially his willingness to steal under the disguise of the Blue Spirit. Admittedly, this is not the absolute worst decision Zuko has ever made. It gives him time to clear his head and think about how important Iroh really is to him. And it leads to one of the all-time most important episodes of the show, Zuko Alone, wherein Zuko is plunged into the depths of anxiety and despair after being chased out of a town despite committing some of the most moral actions he has ever done. However, his decision to leave does upset Iroh, at least as much as anything can upset Iroh. In episode 208, The Chase, Iroh has tea with Toph, who is to him a stranger, and she does her best to assure him that Zuko will eventually come around. He doesn't dismiss this suggestion just because Toph is a child and doesn't know the situation as well as Iroh does.
That is not who Iroh is.
He takes her suggestion into account and he appreciates it a lot. He doesn't condescend to her because she's a child or because she's blind. He treats her with respect and honor. In terms of the structure of the story, the sequence mostly exists to get Toph back with Team Avatar, but it's not a wholly one-sided sequence. When Toph says that Iroh should make Zuko know how much Iroh needs him, too, Iroh does not dismiss this out of hand. He takes what she says to mind. He cares about what she has to say. And Toph's words about Iroh needing Zuko are true. They are very resonant. Of course, Iroh is not lost like Zuko, but in a very real way, the quest to help Zuko gave Iroh's life meaning again after the tragic death of his son at the Battle of Ba Sing Se.
Zuko and Iroh are reunited after the latter is hurt in the battle against Azula. With care and compassion, Zuko helps him heal, even though Iroh doesn't much appreciate Zuko's attempts to make tea. When Zuko's not looking, Iroh throws out the tea. Iroh is quite the tea snob. More importantly, they travel together for the rest of the season. In episode 209, Bitter Work, Iroh teaches Zuko how to redirect lightning, a technique that will save Zuko's life when he confronts his father in episode 311, The Day of Black Sun Part 2. As importantly, Iroh teaches him about the Four Elements and the Four Nations. Iroh invented his lightning redirection technique while studying waterbenders. He speaks of how it's important to draw knowledge from all four nations. When Zuko comments how Avatar-related this all sounds, Iroh responds that what makes the Avatar strong is how they are able to draw power from the different nations. Suddenly, the thematic focus of the show snaps right into place. The Avatar being able to use all four elements is not just a cool power, it's a statement of philosophical intent. It is the show saying we're stronger when we learn from those around us, particularly those who are different from us. In terms of Zuko's storyline, this declaration that wisdom should be sought from all places, even places that are unexpected, leads him to investigate the ruins of the ancient Sun Warrior civilization after he finds himself no longer able to firebend. Eventually, he discovers that the Sun Warrior civilization is still very much alive, and its masters, the dragons Ran and Shaw, teach him and Aang the true meaning of firebending. They teach them that it's not something based on fear, but rather energy and life. However, Iroh teaches them something just as important, that life doesn't have to be about conquest and domination. There's nothing wrong with living a nice, simple, happy life. When Zuko and Iroh arrive in Ba Sing Se, Iroh quickly makes a name for himself as a fantastic tea maker. He's given his own shop in the Upper Ring, which he names the Jasmine Dragon, owing to his love of jasmine tea. Zuko is initially not happy with this turn of events. He laments that his uncle's dreams are coming true, while his own dreams to capture the Avatar, reclaim his position as the Crown Prince, and win his father's approval are as far away as ever. He says that he doesn't want to make a life in Ba Sing Se, to which Iroh simply but cleverly responds that life happens whether you make it or not. The penultimate episode of Season 2, The Guru, ends with Zuko contentedly helping out in the tea shop. This inner peace does not last, however. He's quickly conflicted again when Azula basically offers him everything he has ever wanted. I'd like to note that this is a really brilliant writing decision. Offering Zuko, who seems to have become a completely different person from who he was in Season 1, all his Season 1 desires is a great way to gauge how much he has actually changed. If we are to view this as a test, he fails. Katara, heartbroken, says that she thought he had changed, to which Zuko can only respond that he has changed. Does his response make sense? No, but it's interesting nonetheless. It shows he has nothing else to say. It shows he cannot square the vulnerable side of himself that he revealed to Katara with the choice he is making. However, we must note that even at this point, Zuko still cares deeply about Iroh. There are many reasons he feels guilt for what he did, but the top reason is that Iroh put his trust in him, and he let Iroh down. Azula tries to assuage his guilt by claiming that it was Iroh who betrayed Zuko, not the other way around, but Zuko knows this just is not true. He knows his actions have not freed him from the anguish that has been plaguing him since he was 13. Instead, they have deepened that anguish. Already, in episode 302, a mere 2 episodes after Zuko turned against Iroh, he is desperately begging Iroh for help. Iroh says nothing. There is a limit to even his mercy. Zuko becomes furious, berating his uncle for not siding with him. Iroh knows Zuko isn't saying these things because he's sure he made the right decision. Quite the opposite. He's saying these things because he's not sure, and he wants terribly to convince himself. Iroh sheds a tear for Zuko. He knows his nephew is still conflicted, and he hopes his nephew will make the right choice, which he eventually does, but it is a long road to getting there. The next time they interact, in The Avatar and the Fire Lord, episode 306, Iroh attempts to make Zuko understand the struggle within himself. One of Zuko's great-grandfathers was Fire Lord Sozin, the tyrant who began the 100-Year War. However, another of Zuko's great-grandfathers was Avatar Roku, the man who tried to stop Sozin. Iroh draws a connection from this to the two sides of Zuko's self. Zuko is a man capable of both great good and great evil, and which he chooses depends upon which side of himself he ultimately chooses. Zuko is more open to these ideas than he would have otherwise been because of his experiences in episode 305, The Beach. That episode, which somehow makes the villains having a day at the beach into something important and meaningful and poignant, is anchored by Zuko's sullenness. Even compared to how we saw him act in Season 1, this is different. Back then, he was surly because he had a singular motive. In The Beach, he's aimless. He has everything he ever wanted, and he's still miserable. After a long period of deliberation, he ultimately realizes the person he is angry with is himself. As they say, the first step to solving your problem is admitting you have a problem. Zuko, for the first few episodes of Season 3, tries to pretend he's happy with his new life, but he's not. Once he comes to that revelation, he listens to his uncle make the case as to why he is unhappy, and all that information sinks in. In episode 309, Nightmares and Daydreams, he hears his father's plan to basically commit genocide on the Earth Kingdom. He can't stand with his father after that. When he turns against his father, he tries to free his uncle, only to learn that his uncle has already escaped. He does not see Iroh again until episode 319. When his father is attempting to undermine him, he says that Iroh has had an influence on Zuko, who, unashamed and unabashed, says that his father is right. Zuko declares that Iroh has been more of a father to him than Ozai ever was. Ozai laughs at this, but Zuko is not deterred. Throughout the back half of Season 3, Zuko tries his best to imitate Iroh, whom he now recognizes as the most important positive role model in his life. In episode 312, the Western Air Temple, he tries to do an Iroh impression, and he doesn't do a bad job, talking about how he has to look within himself to save himself from his dark side, but he is still unable to fully grasp Iroh's wisdom. In episode 314, The Boiling Rock, Part 1, he tries to impart words of wisdom to Sokka, talking about how in between the dark side and the light side, there's a silver lining, and that makes a sandwich, and one has to bite into the silver sandwich. Sokka doesn't understand what he's saying, and that's at least partially because Zuko doesn't understand either. Similarly, Zuko, while serving Team Avatar tea, tries to tell a tea joke, but he can only remember the punchline so no one laughs. Nevertheless, the fact that he is trying extremely hard to be like his uncle is apparent. Despite his fumbling and awkwardness, he offers real help to the original 3 members of Team Avatar, Aang, Katara, and Sokka. The Zuko field trip arc is the most important arc thematically in the entire show. The Sokka episodes are more a matter of him providing physical help than emotional and philosophical help, which is why they are the weakest of the Zuko field trip episodes, though they're still quite good. More impressive are the other field trip episodes. He helps Aang work through his distrust of firebending, and he helps Katara handle her complicated feelings about revenge. He's not exactly like Iroh, but he shouldn't be. What matters is that he's taking the lessons Iroh taught him and putting them into practice. This, as much as anything, makes his redemption feel earned. It takes an incredible amount of determination and confidence to throw off years of conditioning and turn against his father, but it takes just as much initiative to prove to the disbelieving Team Avatar that he has changed. It would have been easy for him to give up, but he doesn't. He keeps fighting, even earning the trust of Katara, the person he brutally betrayed at the end of Season 2. This leads to his reunion with his uncle. Zuko is prepared for a complicated confrontation. He has all these doubts, all these arguments, all these apologies in his head, but then he sees his uncle is asleep. Instead of leaving the tent, Zuko stays. He waits for his uncle to wake up. The passage of time does not lessen Zuko's anxieties. If anything, it makes those anxieties worse. When Iroh awakens, Zuko says that he must have complicated feelings about seeing him. He apologizes and pledges to be better. Still, Iroh doesn't say anything. Zuko's pleas become more desperate. He is on the verge of an emotional breakdown.
Then his uncle hugs him, and he is absolutely shocked. Zuko had betrayed Iroh more deeply than he had betrayed anyone else, yet Iroh is willing to completely forgive him. Iroh's even willing to be proud of him. Iroh's appreciation that Zuko has chosen the right path, the moral path, just overwhelms everything else. Even to Aang and Sokka and Katara, Zuko had a lot to do to prove that he had in fact changed. But Iroh takes him back instantly. All Iroh has wanted is for Zuko to find his way again, and Zuko has. Zuko turned away from the darkness that was consuming his life, even though that darkness gave him everything he had ever wanted. It's an achingly, wondrously cathartic moment that is the perfect culmination for one of the best relationships, not just in Avatar: The Last Airbender, but on every TV show ever, animated or otherwise. It's the story of a young man who's able to overcome the psychological and physical abuse inflicted upon him by his tyrannical father and become a better person. He is now someone who fights not to capture the Avatar, but for a better and freer and kinder world. This is also the story of an old man who's able to give his life meaning again by helping his nephew in the way that he could not help his late son. He stops his life from becoming just one of regrets. Their story is inspirational in a real and non-shallow way. It's something to aspire to. Not bad for two characters who are introduced as the angry, sullen teenager and the comic relief uncle. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching Avatar, it's a fantastic show. And don't forget to tune in soon for the next Avatar Explained video. It will be coming out very soon. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades!